Baluchistan is occupied territory. It never willingly acceded to Pakistan, does not now wish to be part of Pakistan. If a plebiscite or referendum were held tomorrow, it would vote to leave Pakistan, as would every province and territory west of the Indus River. We have a fundamental problem in that we refuse to see Pakistan for what it is. We imagine or pretend that it's a legitimate state, really in our own image, a democracy. But it's a democracy only as long as its military rulers allow it to be a democracy. It is, in fact, a miniature empire, a last artifact, along with a few other countries around the world, of the imperial age, with artificial borders, which we defend as we do elsewhere. And I find it a travesty that our State Department obsesses on the inviolability of borders around the world drawn at Versailles or in Berlin in the 1880s or in the late 1940s. How is it, in the year of our Lord 2012, we send our troops to bleed or die to defend the residue of the European world order? And let me be clear, I do not argue that we should actively campaign militarily to change every border in the world. I argue that when the train is coming down the tracks toward you, you are wise to step off the tracks. In the last 2 decades, since the end of the Cold War, the United States of America, the greatest force for freedom in human history, every war and conflict in which we have engaged has been triggered by or exacerbated by these flawed European borders. How can we send our soldiers and Marines and Navy corpsmen to die for that? That's not who we are. But what is Pakistan? Pakistan is bisected by the Indus River. To the east of the Indus River is metropolitan, core Pakistan, the Punjab, and to a great extent, the province of Sindh. It is the world of the subcontinent. It is a different civilization from that west of the Indus River. West of the Indus River, in the occupied territories, you have the culture of Central and Mid-Asia. When you cross the Indus River either way, even the food is different. And we look at this occupied territory of Baluchistan specifically, where people who simply yearn for fundamental freedoms, for the right to determine their own future, whether or not they have a battery of qualified teachers ready to go. We must admire their determination to sacrifice everything against enormous odds in Pakistan and Iran for the simple right to say, I am a Baluch. I will decide my own future. Instead, we support Pakistan, their oppressor, a state that actively supports and arms terrorists and insurgent movements in Afghanistan that kill and maim our own soldiers. The Pakistani government is not our friend. It is not the friend of the Baluch or the other subjugated peoples west of the Indus River.
Gravely concerned about the situation in Pakistan.
Caught in the middle of America's war on terror, Pakistan is playing both sides. Many believe its intelligence service, the ISI, has been working with the Afghan Taliban, even while its offshoot, the Pakistani Taliban, massacres innocent civilians at home.
We are seeing the scourge of terrorism, but it has now transformed and taken the shape of Talibanization.
The only good Taliban is a dead Taliban.
So, the country's top spy agency, a rogue organization, a state within a state, and who really calls the shots on Pakistan's foreign policy? I'm Mehdi Hassan, and I've come here to the Oxford Union to go head-to-head with General Asad Durrani, the former Director General of the ISI. I'll challenge him on the rather cosy relationship between the Taliban and Pakistani intelligence, and ask him whether his country is still playing both sides in the so-called war on terror. In particular, Pakistani military intelligence, the ISI, that you were once in charge of, played in giving the world the Taliban?
What we did was the requirement at that time. Still today, I won't say that one regretted it. One played the card as it was to be played. One would have done it a little better job, certainly. No doubt about that.
When you say better job, you would have given us more Taliban or less? The only reason they've managed to make a comeback is because of support from the Pakistan government, military, ISI. That's pretty outrageous, isn't it?
After 2001, after the invasion of Afghanistan, the Taliban made the first move to reconciliate with the Kabul regime, which was rejected. And if they had to rise again to resist foreign occupation, and had 1/3 of the Afghan population sympathetic to the Taliban.
If you're saying that they've got potential support, undeniably they do, they represent factions in Afghanistan, undeniably they do, that means, yes, you try and bring them into a political process. It doesn't mean you actually secretly, behind the scenes, support their so-called insurgency and help them by giving them weapons and letting them blow stuff up.
How else would anyone speak to them unless they have some power potential? Unless they can show the ability, as I said, so 2002, if you reject them, you are out.
So it's old-fashioned.
You no longer count.
It's old-fashioned ends justify the means.
Is it old-fashioned? To give the Taliban and their supporters in Pakistan a big applause.
Applaud the Taliban? Well,
absolutely, because they have...
You talk about resisting foreign occupation. Let's just break that down. According to the UN, of the 4,000 people, civilians, who were killed in Afghanistan last year, the Taliban killed 75% of them. Is that what you want us to applaud?
How many were killed by the occupation forces?
Well, 75% were killed by the Taliban.
Maybe a little less, but I'm not contesting the figures.
You're an educated man, you're a general, you're a senior person. Your response to me saying that they've killed 3 out of 4 civilians last year cannot be, how much did the other side kill? We are not in the playground, General. 75% of the civilian casualties were caused by the Afghan Taliban. You want us to applaud that?
This is the nature of this war.
You've said in the past that the US and Pakistan are, quote, at war against each other. Is that still your view? It's different to say we are at war. You use the phrase that America and Pakistan are at war.
Right.
The reason I bring this up is it's a funny sort of war in which one side gives the other side billions of dollars in aid, and the other side takes the money, pockets it, and then goes and helps the enemies of the people who gave them that cash. That's a weird sort of war.
I think we got much less money than we should have.
It certainly didn't give you money to go and help their enemies and give safe houses to Taliban leaders and coordinate their activities in Afghanistan with roadside bombs, etc., etc.
So we fooled them.
Is that what you think? You fooled them?
No harm in doing that.
What would you say to someone who says, basically, the behavior of Pakistan in recent years, and which you're clearly so proud of, is the behavior of a quite treacherous and duplicitous country?
Double games. And if we did it successfully, I suppose this is again in the nature of this thing.
Okay. Do you regard yourself as a moral man?
But in the statecraft, the morality takes a backseat.
You suggest that this is about statecraft, it's about playing games, it's about riding horses. If you said, you know what, we don't do morality, we get things done. The problem is, you don't get things done either. Even on a practical level, that is a Frankenstein's monster that you lot created. That is a blowback from your pragmatic policies.
Collateral damage. Oh, my word. There is a price to be paid for this type of game. It's a high-stake
full
game.
Of kids is collateral damage.
Right. High-stake game. Some people, like you believe, that we created a few groups.
When you've been the head of a country's intelligence agency for 2 years and now more latterly described as a mouthpiece for the Taliban, or perhaps outspoken isn't quite strong enough. Hamid Gul was the head of Pakistan's ISI, its intelligence agency, between 1987 and 1989. These days, though, he's a vocal critic of the way Pakistan has aligned itself, at least publicly, with the United States in its fight against the Taliban. And it is that fight against the Taliban in both Pakistan and Afghanistan where we began our discussion.
So the idea was that the policies that Pervez Musharraf had set in line, those policies would continue rolling. In fact, not only have they rolled for the past 2 years in spite of, was that these Taliban are not the Afghan Taliban. Please remember that.
No, Pakistan Taliban.
They are Pakistan Taliban, and they are driven by an Islamic spirit or spirit of freedom or an exalted purpose, as the Afghan Taliban are. These are driven mainly by revenge motivation. So, these people are out to take revenge. If you go back into history, there is a thing called Pakhtunwali. Among the Pashtun tribes of Pakistan and Afghanistan, Pakhtunwali is an honor code, and one of the principal clauses of that honor code is badal. Badal means taking revenge. Now, these young people are taking revenge, and they have been armed, given money, financed, supported and trained, but also in Baluchistan, and Pakistan has been crying hoarse over these issues. Mossad is there, the Israeli intelligence, that Indians are stabbing us in the back, and all Swatis are not Pashtuns. But as far as Waziristan is concerned, South Waziristan, it is one homogeneous tribe, and they have been fighters for centuries. They carry bare weapons, and they can fight it out. The British learned it the hard way. The military is basically camped in various areas of South Waziristan, and hopefully it will give rise to a guerrilla type of warfare.
We're speaking to the former head of the Pakistani ISI, Hamid Gul, here on Talk to Al Jazeera.
Al-Qaeda leader Osama bin Laden is being housed deep inside Pakistan, and that housing is being facilitated by members of Pakistan's intelligence service. That the ISI and Al-Qaeda, along with Al-Qaeda's local allies, are locked in Pakistan. ISI is supporting ex-jihadists or Y jihadists. We have a situation where Al-Qaeda and its local allies, the Pakistani Taliban, have openly declared war. The ISI is a large entity. Its top leadership is involved in backing Al-Qaeda. In fact, the chain of command that exists within the directorate allow for people to be batting for both sides, if you will. There are low-level operatives, people who are at the lowest level of the directorate, who do have more proximity and sympathy with the jihadist cause, the transnational jihadist cause, and therefore supporting these people in terms of material and other forms of assistance. There's also the likelihood that former members of the ISI who retain links with the directorate are involved in this. There are also lots of consultants and contractors on the payroll of the directorate that may be involved because they have retired from the military service and are not exactly bona fide employees. So we need to keep a semblance of some sort of clarity here when we say that there are linkages between the ISI and Al-Qaeda, and at the same time supporting each other.
Over the years, billions of American hard-earned tax dollars have been wasted on Pakistan. America is pouring money into a bottomless pit by giving money to Pakistan.
Now for a story that will get you thinking and might even make you rethink some firmly held views. First, some facts. Since 9/11, a decade ago, Washington has given the government of Pakistan more than $20 billion in aid. 2/3 of that has gone to the military to fight the war on terror. The other third, about $6 billion, has gone for development of Pakistan's civilian economy and society. The theory behind many of those billions of dollars is that by bringing Pakistan's poorest out of poverty and despair, fewer young men will be seduced by radical Islam.
They rely on assistance in order to be able to wage this fight with us.
We must stand with those who want to build Pakistan.
Providing this assistance is not only the right thing to do, but we believe it is essential to global security and the security of the United States.
But what if you discovered that aid money does not necessarily make Pakistanis less likely to turn to terror? What if you learned that there's actually no correlation between being poor and supporting Islamic extremism?
It's different to say we are at war. You use the phrase that America and Pakistan are at war.
Right.
The reason I bring this up is it's a funny sort of war in which one side gives the other side billions of dollars in aid, and the other side takes the money, pockets it, and then goes and helps the enemies of the people who gave them that cash. That's a weird sort of war.
We need to demand results. What is the money achieving? A CNN poll from last week shows that nearly half of all Americans think all aid to Pakistan should be stopped. We need to demand results. What is the money achieving? A CNN poll from last week shows that nearly half of all Americans think all aid to Pakistan should be stopped. Another quarter think it should be reduced. It seems like 10 years and $20 billion later, the American people understand basic lessons in accounting that Washington has been learning the hard way.
Shocked to find out is that Pakistan actually has lobbyists.
Americans, that they pay.
How can that even be legal, that a foreign country hires lobbyists?
They all have lobbyists. But Pakistan's are very good because they've gotten $20 billion allegedly to fight the war on terror. That's a pretty good lobbyist. Especially
since 9/11.
Yeah, and especially since they're taking the money that they're supposedly fighting terrorism with, and they're building nuclear bombs with it.
Right.
And we don't know this, we don't do accounting, we don't. Well, they have 100 nuclear bombs.
There's no incentive. I mean, if we're giving them money.
That Osama bin Laden had been hiding in Pakistan, they're not going to believe that nobody in any position of authority in the Pakistan government or intelligence services didn't know. I mean, it defies belief that somebody as notorious as Osama bin Laden could be living in that compound so close to military installations that nobody knew. So there's a massive breakdown in trust between America and Pakistan.
Yes, that I totally agree with you. But I personally am convinced that it is complicity. I believe that. I strongly believe that is the truth. But however, to prove it to...
But do you want that? I mean, just again, are you not being generous? I mean, you say that there was negligence but not complicity. What you mean is some people must have known but weren't deliberately hiding.
He was there for 5 years. That means 2 years was in my tenure. Now, one thing I'm 500% sure is about myself. Nobody has to tell me that. Because I was the army chief also. And the ISI, the intelligence agencies, are manned, mainly officered by military, Army, Navy, Air Force, mainly Army. And they have most of them have associations with me.
But instead, they've built 100 nuclear bombs, and they're on their way to 200. I mean, they're cranking out nuclear bombs like sausages.
Right.
And there's apparently nothing we can do about it. Their whole worldview is, India, must kill India. And that's why they started the Taliban. They started the Taliban to give them a base in Afghanistan so the Indians wouldn't be there. They're paranoid, and they're such pathological liars, they don't even know when they're lying anymore.
You're talking about the Pakistanis?
Pakistanis.
Okay.
They're only, the only worse ally you could have is Pakistan.
And right, because, I mean, bin Laden must have had support from, I mean, what do you think the level of support he had? Where was that coming from? How high up?
Military intelligence people who were supporting him and getting him the money, getting him the protective cover. He thought he was safe. I mean, if you look at the defenses of that villa, there weren't any. Why? Because he thought he'd get a phone call.
Right.
And he had money sewn into his jacket and phone numbers to call and sewn into his jacket. He thought he'd get tipped.
And Pakistan acts very angry at us that we did this, and they say, we're going to retaliate if you do it again. What could they possibly do?
General Musharraf, did Osama bin Laden, who of course was killed by the US Navy SEALs in May in Abbottabad in Pakistan, did he go to Pakistan after you left office?
He was there in Abbottabad. As far as I'm concerned, whenever anyone asks me where he is, not very openly. Not very openly. He was locked up in the best place, the safest place is in a thickly populated place. This is a town. All tourists into the mountains of Pakistan go through Abbottabad, a population of 600,000 people. And there are civilian and military people all mixed and stay together.
A former Pakistani intelligence official who knew bin Laden well told Al Jazeera that Sharif received financial support from bin Laden, among others.
One thing I tell you, today Mr. Nawaz Sharif refuses that he ever met Osama or he ever got any support from Osama. This is bad. He was a person who would always ask me, where is my benefactor? I would like to salute him. It was sometimes Osama's money, sometimes money came from outside, and the maximum money ultimately came from the governments. It came from government of Saudi Arabia, it came from other governments also.
الذي أنا أعرف شخصيا أنه حدث بسبب أن هناك كان صديق مشترك لبن لادن ونواز شريف وهو أحد الإخوة خالد خواجة الذي قد اشتغل في السابق في جهاز الاستخبارات الباكستاني، وهو طبعا كان من الداعمين للجهاد الأفغاني ضد القوات السوفيتية، وأيضا كان بالاتصال الوثيق مع بن لادن. فحينما تعرض بعض المجاهدين العرب في بشاور بعض المضايقات من الأجهزة الباكستانية في حكومة بينظير الأولى، فهو اقترح على بن لادن أن يدعم نواز شريف الذي كان زعيم المعارضة يعني في آنذاك لإسقاط حكومة بينظير بوتو.
When General Zia was killed, the Pakistani security agencies started arresting them. That was the problem, and Sheikh Osama bin Laden wanted to resolve this problem. He wanted some help, but nobody was ready to help him. Some people contacted him and they said that actually this is Benazir Bhutto's government which is creating problems, and if you want the solution of your problem, a new government can solve your problem, so you must support us. So Sheikh Osama bin Laden asked some Pakistani religious scholars, some ulama, to support Nawaz Sharif, and according to my information, Nawaz Sharif also